you're spitting on me.
Oh, whatever. Whatever. Yeah, that's right. All right, let's go ahead and pray. Father, thank you for bringing us together. Thank you for what you are doing in us so that you can work through us. For what you're calling us to advance the kingdom here, for what you're doing in the community. We are so grateful to be called your children, and we're grateful you've invited us to be co-laborers. Thank you for that. Allow us to hear each other, allow us to listen, allow us to speak. Speak honestly and lovingly. In Jesus' name, amen. A couple of things real quick that I want to do before we kind of launch into the material of the night. I want to kind of give you a lay of the land, but first I want to make sure everybody here knows who's in the room, all right? So I think I've gotten to see most of you. I'm Ron Martoya, so I'm playing kind of the interim role. I've met a couple of people I haven't met, so if you hadn't met me before, seen me before, I'm doing the interim work until June 9th and kind of orchestrating the closing of Master's Way and then going into that period of time where we'll be building something new. So I'm here. I want to introduce to you Matt Jones. Many of you heard him Sunday. Matt's head of new congregational development, and he's going to have some things to say tonight. You know Dale Cohen. I think everybody knows Dale. He's the district superintendent. He's going to help us think through kind of structurally some of the things that are going to be happening. And then Michael and Suzanne Katchke, which some of you may or may not know, they're sitting right here. And they are the pastors of Crosswinds, and they will be, as of June 1, officially the senior pastors here. And we'll talk more about later about how that will work, because there will be another appointment that is part of that as well. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do is I want to tell you where we're going to go tonight. We've got four or five kind of major areas. And then what I want to do is I'm going to ask you to get out a pen and paper so that if you've got questions, I'd like us to take the questions at the end, because I think what might very well happen is that as we go through the information, we'll go, oh, my question just got answered. Oh, thank you. Or maybe bigger questions got raised that you can ask more intelligently at the end. Okay, so we're just going to kind of rifle through this, try to get all the information out that we know, and then we'll go ahead and go from there. Okay? Is that cool for ground rules? I really want to invite you, I mean, we've talked about this in the very first meeting I was here. I really want to invite you as much as possible to suspend judgment long enough so that you can really hear. Because when there's anxiety in systems and in groups, it's real easy not to hear. I mean, it's just natural. That's how we all are wired. It's not a flaw. It's just how we're wired. We get a little anxious, so we don't hear totally clearly. And so I want to try to minimize that as much as possible. Okay, is that fair? All right, so let's start. I want to talk about the closing period. From June 9th on, we're going to be closed. We know that. The shape of that was up for kind of conversation last week when I was here. So that's one of the reasons I wanted the whole team here, so that you could hear from anybody and ask questions. Then Suzanne's going to come and speak just a little bit about what the kind of trajectory of the future looks like. Then Dale is going to come, and Matt, and they're going to talk a little bit about some of the structural leadership changes that need to happen, so that you're kind of aware of how the teams will blend, what will be dissolved, what will be built, how that will work. Matt's going to address some of the financial issues of what a new church start means, what that looks like, address some of that, as well as what the new church shape and name will look like, bringing some financial clarity. And then Suzanne and Michael are going to just come and talk about the joint leadership meetings, which I've announced to you briefly, but they can kind of give a little bit of contours of what we're going to do with that. All right? And then after that, you can fire away. All right? Fair enough? All right. So let's start with the closing period. June 9th, you guys know this. June 9th, Master's Way as we know it. We will celebrate what God has done, and Master's Way as we know it will close and we'll be gone. Okay? So we know that. Now what the shape of that is, and this was the thing that was causing some disconcerting news last week was, well, what's going to happen? I mean, I thought we could meet here. I thought we could do that. So that's why I wanted the whole team here. What is clear to us is June 9th, the doors are going to be closed, the doors are going to be locked, and the grass is going to grow. Okay? People will not be in the building. A couple reasons, the reasons I mentioned. One, this is going to be a construction zone. The outside is going to be construction zone, the outside building is going to be construction zone, and the inside is going to be construction zone. Okay? So that means that there's several things that entail with that. A couple things. One, MDO, right? Now, what you need to know is we just hung up the phone with Carrie. Michael and Suzanne had a nice meeting with her this week. And we just talked to her in Florida and told her where this is going to go. So what we've decided so far is that MDO will definitely not be here. That's for sure. All right, that's a done deal. And she knows that. What we do recognize is there are some possibilities about what's going to happen in the summer. We're not totally sure. That's going to be up to Carrie, her teachers, and Michael and Suzanne to ferret out. What we're hoping to have happen, though, is that during this closed period of time, we would be able to go ahead and work with them, and they work with Michael and Suzanne in the neighborhoods around here to get ready for a relaunch in the fall. We had said last week, we didn't even know if we were going to do that. After Michael and Suzanne had met with her, talked with her about the shape of it, they're pretty sure that that's really a good idea to relaunch that under the new church, all right? To keep Carrie, to keep her teachers, it's a great program, things are going well. What we want to let you know is we are going to take responsibility for going ahead and writing a letter, telling the parents why. All the parents, which you need to know is about 20 families, all right? That's about 20 families that will be affected by this not happening here, all right? Letting those 20 families know what's going to happen. If the program doesn't continue on, which, I mean, it's definitely not going to continue on here, and Carrie's not real excited about moving it elsewhere. That's sort of where she's at the moment, which that's fine. That's where she's at. What we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to not only send a letter, not only make a phone call to those parents, not only refund their money, we're going to give them a voucher for the future, a voucher with some amount of money that's to be decided, so that when things re-ramp in the fall, they'll be enticed to want to be a part of that. And in addition to that, we are going to make sure that Carrie and her teachers are taken care of for what would have been their job income. Okay? So this is a way for them to say, hey, we really want you involved. We would like them to be involved in building an even better program as we launch it in the fall. So they will be a part of, if they choose to, this is, you know, they're not going to be forced to, but if they choose to be a part of Michael and Suzanne's team to say, we need to get serious for a launch that will just be a slam dunk. All right, it is a good program. She's, you know, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in it. So, and we want to capitalize on that. And so, literally, I mean, 10 minutes ago, we just hung up the phone with her. Okay, so you need to know she's already in the loop and was actually kind of excited, like, wow, okay. I mean, she was a little surprised actually. So, want you to know that. All right, that also means a couple other things entail to the closing the facility. One, I think there was a sense that there would, you know, that life groups could go on, and I think there was an assumption that life groups could go on here. That is not the case, all right? I've got Dale here on purpose so that he can clarify later if you want to ask questions about that, that's fine. But because of the same reasons MDO can't go on here, life groups can't go on here, all right? And that means that in terms of the facility, and I think you understand this, the whole point of closing the facility is because Master's Way is closing and going away. All right? You're not going away, but Master's Way is going away. So for us to have the facility open, have activity in the facility, is to send not the signal we want to the surrounding community, and that is Master's Way is done. Okay? So that's part of what's behind that. I'll let Dale and Matt continue to speak to that as we go through the night, but that's, you know, that's the big piece. All right? So I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Did I miss anything else on the MBA? I think that's the gist of it. All right, I'm going to have Suzanne come because I want to try to help you understand and have Suzanne kind of cast some vision for you that this time between now and June 9th when we finally close, and then June 9th until September 8th when we finally open, these next 5 months, you guys, are big months. I think there could be a tendency to think, well, this is really going to be inactive. We're kind of landing the plane and then we're closing down. But just Master's Way, as we know, it's closed, right? Master's Way is closed. But this group of people, if you decide you want to be a part of this next thing God's going to do, we got big work to do. I told you this Sunday, right? I mean, last Sunday we said, hey, listen, we're in in-between space and it's awkward space, but man, we got big adventure here. So I'm going to have Suzanne come. I'd like you to hear from her so that you can kind of get a sense of what that looks like.
Thank you. Michael and I are so glad to be here tonight. You all have been in our prayers for weeks. We had a lunch with Barry, and we've known Barry for a long time. He's a friend of ours, and he told us what amazing people you are. And we are just so excited to be here. But we also come here knowing that there's a lot of anxiety, and there's grief and the loss of Barry, and there's always inner turmoil when there's change. And we want you to know that we get that. And we are praying for you, and we're praying for the future of what God's going to do. Since Michael and I were informed about the news that this was going to happen, we've been doing something that pastors do with Scripture every Sunday. On Sunday, you get ready to preach a passage, you study the passage, and in pastor world, we call it you exegete the passage. So you know what you're talking about, and you're able to share it. And so what Michael and I have been doing, we've been spending some time exegeting the community around here. In fact, yesterday, we spent the day just traveling from neighborhood to neighborhood and looking at all the people that are around here. We've looked at the reports, and what the reports say, what Mission Insight, which is a site that studies people, compiles demographic information, it says that within a 2-mile radius of this church, the people that would say their faith is important to them is 12%. There's a huge number of people who need to be introduced to a relationship to Christ right here in our backyard. Now, Michael and I, we didn't grow up in the church. Neither one of us became Christians until we were almost 30 years old. And nobody knocked on our door. And nobody invited us to Bible school. And no church was coming to bring a girl from a broken family, Michael from a broken family as well. Nobody was coming in telling us about how our lives could be changed by the power of Christ. So at that age, when we became Christians, the thing that really set us on fire is, I can remember having a conversation with somebody after I found out about Christ. And I was walking through, at the time I worked for Boeing, I was walking through the parking lot, and I said, these people don't know. They don't know. And he looked at me, and he said, that's all right. You'll calm down. Well, I don't ever want to calm down when it comes to reaching people for Christ. And we have such an opportunity here, and it is so much bigger. This call where Christ tells us to go and tell others, it's so much bigger than one location, a congregation in Harvest, a congregation here. This is God's vision for all of us. This is what God has called all of us to do. And we are so excited to be part of this journey. And we hope that you will take part of that journey with us as we go through this. The summer is not going to be dark. It's going to be busy. We're going to be gearing up. We're going to be out of the neighborhoods. We're going to be meeting our neighbors. And we're going to tell them about a Savior who's changed my life and who I know has changed your life. And we hope that you will want to be part of that as we capture a vision for what God has called all of us to do. You know, we came out of a church that had a kingdom-sized vision. We were associate pastors in the church, and the pastor recognized in us that we had a passion for evangelism, that we were about reaching people who don't know God, families who are struggling, who are broken, who are experiencing things that we read about in the papers, but they're right in front of us. And that church took a leap of faith and helped us launch the congregation in which we currently serve. And we hope that you will join us and take a leap of faith and join us as we try to reach those people who are in desperate need of God's love, God's grace, and God's compassion.
Thanks, Suze. Dale, I'm going to have you come, and Matt, you two, to go ahead and help us understand structure, what's going to happen in terms of teams, some financial stuff, and also what happens in terms of new church development, and that's really Matt's area. So.
All right.
Are you going to follow that?
No.
But
I will.
After a
Yeah.
very high vision.
DSs can't preach anyway, so you know, that's why we end up doing what we do, is what I'm told. just want to reiterate kind of the structure of what's going to happen. You all probably don't know this, but Master's Way has a number by which you are identified. There's a conference number and there's a general church number. You're in the 4,000s because all the churches of the Northeast District are in the 4,000s. Okay? Can't remember exactly what yours is. So basically, say what? 4050. Hey, I should be able to remember that, shouldn't I? 4050. And basically what is going to happen is with the change in the conference year, which goes into effect June 1st, then Master's Way will be 4050 on a circuit with, do y'all know your number? 4090. Okay? So Michael and Suzanne Katchke will be appointed as pastors, as the senior pastors, co-pastors of 4050 and 4090. Okay? And we are anticipating the appointment of a third pastor to the team. And that person, you will know who that is on Sunday, April 14th, at the conclusion of the last worship service of the day. So I'm excited about the direction that we're going to be able to go with that. I know there's been questions about the leadership of the church, and what I am recommending is the easiest way to go forward, and I hope this date works. I'm calling a charge conference for Thursday, April the 11th at 7 p.m. For the purpose of electing a transition team that will be comprised of an amalgam of current Master's Way leadership, Crosswinds leadership, and other stakeholders that I feel like need to be a part of that transition team. This team will fill the function of all the administrative committees of the church, meaning it will fulfill the function of finance, trustees, staff parish, and the administrative council of the church. And this will be the team that is in effect until such a time as I think that we're ready to go ahead and launch back into a different leadership model that we hope will reflect the mission of the church. And the Book of Discipline gives us this privilege of doing it, of organizing in any unique way for mission and ministry, as long as the district superintendent will approve that structure. So this is the direction that I think is best for us to go in regard to leadership. And we'll have information out about who we're recommending to be on that team for the charge conference to approve on April the 11th. All right, Matt?
Thanks, Jeff. I kind of get to wear two hats during this. And Ron mentioned one is that I'm over new church development for the conference. And that is not an easy job, to be very honest. And I followed some very apt people who've made some efforts, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the other part of it is just some experiences that I've had, and most of you probably don't know this. I served as executive pastor at Cove Church a couple of years ago when we entered into a very similar conversation with Chase Valley United Methodist Church. And so I was in a little bit different seat, was able to work with Dale on that, and trying to figure out how do you navigate having two existing churches that you then bring into kind of one umbrella, and what does that look like? And it was not easy on either end. And I'm sure that for the people of Chase Valley, they thought, well, this is really simple. Y'all are just kind of coming in and taking over. Not, you know. But there was just so much that went into it, trying to be aware of all that God had done in that church and not do anything to demean or dismiss what God had done there. But at the same time, recognizing that what was going on there now really wasn't getting the job done, just to be kind of honest. It had gone from 400 or 500 in worship down to 60 to 80 in average in an area that should have had a whole lot more people in there. And so the district was having to look at that, and I mean, there were just all these things that we were having to navigate during that. And so one of the reasons that I'm a part of this team is just simply that experience. The things that we figured out to do right, and the things where we totally did it wrong. And hopefully I'll be able to bring that wisdom in, and we'll kind of try and walk through all this in a way that honors God first and foremost, but then also gets us to where we need to get strategically. And sometimes those strategic conversations are hard conversations, and I will do my best to be absolutely honest with you. I have a friend who says that a lot of people have honest conversations up to the 90%, and it's that last 10% that they hold back because they just don't quite want to go there. And what I'm going to do is I'll give you the full 100% as I see it. It's just my perspective. Switching hat to New Church is a similar situation that I would see with Chase Valley. Is that from my seat, from my office, and it's been Dick Freeman who was here when this church was planted. You look at certain areas, I look at certain areas, we do the mission insight, we do all these studies, and we project at that point, based on the number of people in that area, we want to plant a church, and we expect that church should be able to reach a certain number of people in order to really call it a success. And a lot of that has to do, and a lot of y'all have business and other things, you know this, is that when you put a certain amount of resources into an effort, it's because you're expecting a certain goal to be reached in that process. We know that if I plant a church right now, if I send an ordained elder there, that it needs to average 150 in worship to break even. That when we look at the amount of money that we put into our churches, between pastor salaries and all the other things that go along with that, 150 worship is just the break-even point. And so I'm not going to plant a church that I don't think it's at least going to hit that, right? And so when I look around at church plants that are under that, what I know is that, and where I feel accountable is that God is expecting me to be a steward of the apportionments that you and other people send into the conference to plant new churches, is that I'm being a good steward of what God's given us. And that I'm not investing in something that is not reaching the potential it needs to reach. And so it makes for hard conversations. We have discontinued several new church plants over the last couple of years where we've had to sit down with the pastor and say, you know, we just can't continue to fund this like we are. We pulled, this is almost embarrassing to say, we pulled the plug on something that we let limp along for way too long. We had over $700,000 invested in a congregation that after all the years we've worked on it, and it had been through trying to tweak it, and it had about 40 in worship. That is horrible stewardship. And so part of how I look at all this is from that standpoint. And so where we are right now, Master's Way hasn't been able to pay some of its bills. Had to cut back. It's been tighter and tighter. And usually what happens, and probably some of y'all are sitting here, you end up with a smaller number of people who are sacrificing more and more, but you find yourself in the death spiral of the church to where you're putting in more and more, but you're offering less and less, which means that people are participating less and less. And so you see it shrinking. You give more and more. Still have to cut, and it shrinks, and it shrinks, and it shrinks. And finally you get to the point, and this was the magic line from Chase Valley when we were meeting with them one night. A very wise person stood up and he said, you know what? I've realized that we can either let the lawyers and the banks tell us what we're going to do because we're headed for broke, or we can let another church come in and tell us what we ought to do. I said, so that was their final decision. Everybody's like, all right, we'll do that. And this is the kind of last 10%, is that there are over 16,000 people within a 1.5 mile radius of this church. And it's just not happening. It's just not happening. Whether it's the structure, whether it's, we don't know. But when we look at that, we say, there's been a lot of investment here because we believe there's a lot of people who need to know Jesus. This isn't a franchise to where I'm saying, hey, there's not enough money coming back through apportionments. I'm saying there's not enough people here who are being impacted for the kingdom for this to be strategic to continue the way that we're doing it. We're beyond tweaks. We're beyond little adjustments here or little adjustments there. And so the way that I'm looking at this new church, and I'm looking at it because I'm funding a lot of it, is I'm planting a new church here. And these church planters who've proven themselves are the people that I want to plant the church here. And it's going to be handled like a new church plant. It's going to be the idea that we're starting from the ground up, and we're going to be in the neighborhoods, and we're going to introduce ourselves, and we're going to get people excited about what God's going to do in this place. And we're going to invite them to come to know God through a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, through community events, community activities, all the things that it takes to successfully plant a new church. And that's what I'm investing in. And so the Catchkeys have agreed to be a part of that plan on our end. And I want you to really have that whole understanding, because it'd be very easy. And I watched people at Chase Valley, they only heard 90%. They didn't want to hear the last 10%. And so they kind of hung in there through the whole transition. And then when Cove launched at Cove at Chase, they came back in and they said, well, wait, you've changed our church. You painted the walls. You did it. This isn't our church anymore. And I thought, well, you're right. This isn't Chase Valley United Methodist Church anymore. This is Cove Church at Chase. And those were hard decisions. Those were hard conversations. But there are over 200 people in worship every Sunday now. So it was the right decision. And the thing that I learned after a lot of heartache and heartburn through all that was that the really good Christian people that had been reached through Chase Valley, because some great things had happened, they found other churches if they didn't want to stay there. And that's what good church people do. But there's a whole lot more people that I see on Sunday mornings there that would not have gone to any church at all if we hadn't made the change. And that's a net gain. That's a big net gain. And so that's why we're doing this. That's why we are here where we are. That's why we're talking about structural changes. That's why we'll be talking about physical plant changes. That's one of the reasons we talk. There's two reasons to talk about this kind of this period between the 9th and when we relaunch. Number one is we want the community just to kind of know something's different. And it's going to be hard for you to drive by and see the yard not taken care of and other things changing. It is going to be hard. I promise you that. But I also promise you, if you hang in here and if you feel like God's calling you to be a part of what Suzanne described, it's going to be really exciting when this thing relaunches and you see this room full again. Because I think it's probably been a while since you came in on a Sunday morning. This room's been full. But it's going to be exciting to be a part of that. Some of you are going to decide, this isn't for me, and I understand that. And I'm not going to try to convince you to do something that's not right for you. So you need to listen to the Catchkeys and kind of hear their vision, spend time in prayer, and decide, is this something that you want to be a part of? Or is it time for you to just connect with another faith community somewhere and say, I need a new church home, and I'm just not in line with that. I got called lots of names from people at Chase Valley with the things that we did. I mean, it was, you know, I was a demon from the pit of hell for some of the changes we made and the things that we did. And I understand that. When you invest emotionally in a plant and in church for a long period of time, it's something that's deep within you. It's very, very hard to see the transition and the changes. I just want to encourage you to work through that. That's one of the main reasons Ron is here. He's really good at helping you deal with those kind of things and sorting out what you feel versus what you think. Work through that. Decide, is this something you want to be a part of? And if not, this is what I'm going to ask you to do. If this isn't for you, I want to ask you simply just to kind of find the place that is for you. But please don't try and sabotage it for anybody else. That was one of the hardest things, not for me, but for the people that stayed, was when their friends left and said all kinds of bad things about those people, because they were now those people. And I saw a lot of friendships really, really, really hurt needlessly. It did not need to happen. If this isn't for you, make peace with that and find the place that is for you. But please don't hurt your friends and those others who want to stay, or even the community, people in the community where they hear something from you so they don't want to come check out the new thing. But please, please honor that. One of the questions that we talked about a little bit earlier that Ron mentioned is identity. So what is this new place going to be? For me, coming from a strategic standpoint of being around the community and looking at things, there's a particular name that pops up when you talk about this particular radius. The name Heritage is just kind of all over the place. And one of the things that I think is going to be very important, and that's where the Mother's Day out and things like that comes in, is that we really connect with this community. And as such, my recommendation, short of God kind of coming into some major, is this becomes Heritage Church. And that it is associated with this community and the people around here. Now that doesn't mean that people from other communities won't come in and do that. I've seen that in a lot of churches. They will come, but this is somewhat an identifier with the elementary school and the neighborhoods and those kind of things. And so that's the working name for this will be Heritage Church. You'll begin to hear and see more things about that. We want to go ahead and put a name with it so that as we have teams out in the community, they can say, hey, we're planting a new church. We call it Heritage Church. We can get a website up and people can find out more information about it. But that's the thinking right now. One last thing that I do want to hit, as Dale talked about 40-50 versus 40-90. And we had to navigate this as well when we were at Chase. We started in with the idea that we were going to do a church merger, which is actually a term defined in the Book of Discipline on the way that two churches can unite under one leadership. And we were planning on doing that, had everything lined up to do that. And then when we did some financial due diligence, we discovered that there was at least one lawsuit pending against one of the churches, Chase Valley. There were some other potential lawsuits pending against that church. And our best wisdom in all of that was we need to close down the legal entity that is Chase Valley United Methodist Church to protect the new entity. So it really wasn't anything mean. It wasn't an emotional decision. It was just a facts up and down. Like, wow, we're setting Cove up to bear liabilities for a church that no longer even really exists other than a number on paper. Our intention, as we've been describing it now, is that both churches would continue to exist. I do want to say that as we do our due diligence and look at all the financial implications, that will color how we move forward and how things are structured. One of my main concerns is that there is $1.7 million of debt associated with this ground and this building and the parsonage. And that would be a lot to put on Crosswinds. In fact, if they tried to go take out a loan to do the renovations here, the bank would probably say no. And so our intention is to keep those two things separate. For me, it is primarily a financial decision. I want to protect Crosswinds from the liability that exists on the debt load with this. If we get to a point where we look at that and we say we actually need to do this as a merger, or we need to do something, as soon as we know that, we will let you know. But I just want to be real honest that that's kind of why that is. And it creates a little bit of awkwardness. It's like, okay, we kind of exist, but we don't exist. We exist on paper, but we have different leadership. And we're being told we can't make decisions. So it's going to be kind of a weird thing. But it's not a philosophical issue. It's a financial issue. It's a legal issue, the way that it's set up. And we'll do everything we can to communicate. Dale will also, as we work through that, and you'll probably have more questions about that when we get to the Q&A. But that's kind of why I'm here. Those are some of my thoughts. I don't like being the person that brings bad news and inflicts pain, but I've also found that a lot of times we hurt people more by not being absolutely honest with them about what's going on. And so that's how I see it from my position as new church development. And again, Dale has a different role, and the Cassies have a different role, different perspectives, but that's how I'm expected from our bishop to evaluate and make decisions on what we fund and how we fund it.
Just some other quick things related to the finances. We know that the mortgage on the parsonage has to be refinanced sometime in May, and I believe the deed is still listed under the district's name, and so we're going to work on getting that refinanced. Primarily, though, just long enough to be able to get it ready to sell. And the new pastor will be receiving a housing allowance, and so that parsonage won't be needed. And the plan would be that some of the capital that we received from the sale of that then could be applied towards some of the changes that need to be made here at this facility. The indebtedness on the land and the property, as Matt said, that's in the neighborhood of $1.7 million. And we will be working on a financial plan as to how to address that. You know, that's a huge challenge, but you know, we can figure this out, and so we will figure it out. But we just need time to work through all of these financial issues, and as I've said all along, every decision that we make is a decision based on our best knowledge of the long-term success of this project. We can't afford to make short-term decisions. We have to make decisions for the long haul. And that's what we're trying to do. Because we want to be back here in a year, year and a half, 2 years, saying, what are we going to do with all the people we've been able to reach? Those are the kind of problems I love to deal with. And that's where we're headed. Because the mission that God has given us, just by our context, is a phenomenal opportunity. And I can't wait to see what God and us are going to do. During the time in which the facility is closed, we still want you on board. As Suzanne shared, it's going to be an active time. Only the building is going to be closed. There's going to be plenty for everybody to do. The Crosswinds folks are expert at knocking on doors. But that's not going to be just them knocking on doors. We're going to need y'all knocking on doors. So we need all hands on deck that are going to be with us for the long haul. And we need you. And of course, during this season, we're going to need you to continue to give as well. And we want you to give toward the vision that Suzanne described of reaching all of these people that God is giving us the opportunity to reach through this whole process that we're involved in. It's going to really take a lot of commitment for some folks to keep writing a check when they drive by and they see the building shut and the grass growing. But I want you to keep thinking about the future and keep thinking about all that God has yet to do here. As great an impact as this place has had on you up to this point, that's just the beginning. There's so much more that God has in store for us, and I can't wait to see. But I have to wait. And being in Holy Week, it's all about waiting. But we long for the resurrection that is to come. Ron?
Okay, well, just a couple things then before you have an opportunity to ask some questions. I want to remind you that the transition team, we will be having meetings April 9th, April 29th, and May 20th. I've already announced those dates. One or two of those meetings will probably be open to a much larger group. It won't be just transition team folks that really want to be on board and move forward. We'll let you know about all that. Those are the dates we've already articulated. But I want to go ahead and just sort of moderate a Q&A. If you've got some questions or some things that you want to go ahead and ask about, shoot your question, raise your hand, I'll acknowledge you, and then I can kind of direct the question. If I can't answer it, I'll direct the question to whoever I think can answer it. All right, so let's go ahead.
I'll start. I got 53 questions, Ron. All right, so after June 9th through September 8th, the folks that want to stay here or whatever,
Right.
will be going to church somewhere else until this reopens.
That's right.
All right? So that starts June 9th.
Right.
Okay.
And we're going to invite everybody, I mean, Crosswinds invites everybody to go over there. If you choose not to go there, then we
Right.
obviously would encourage you to find a church
Okay.
home.
Okay, I just want to make sure I have that clear.
What's that?
Unless someone raises their hand, we'll this continues, okay?
Well, yeah, I guess so. I guess that's all right. I mean, do you really have 53 questions?
Well, it's growing.
Okay.
No,
I don't know that I can entertain all
I
of them.
don't have a few. Okay, on the construction, you know, we're talking about the 1.7 million that we currently have. Indebtedness. Obviously, with more construction, that's going to grow. Do we have any idea what that's going to look like inside and outside? Is the whole
That's a fair
outside?
Yeah. Well, Matt can address that. The answer to that is no, but it won't be adding to our debt. So.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much what I was going to say. Yeah. The first thing is to figure out the scope of what we need to do. And I don't know the answer to that at this point. That's one of the other reasons I think Dale wanted me on this team is I had renovated a pretty good number of facilities. And every facility is different because you got to figure out what is God telling you to do there. And then you figure out, so what kind of tool do we need in order to do it most effectively? And so you could go to Chase Valley and kind of see the changes we made there, but all we did was make it look a lot like Cove because they needed to look alike with what they were doing. So right now it's just going to be a really kind of season of understanding exactly what do we feel like God's calling us to do here to most effectively reach the community, what changes need to be made. It could be paint. It could be major construction. My guess is there'll probably be a little bit larger construction. The bulk of the cost of that, we're hoping that the sale of parsonage will lead into that. Crosswinds will be looking at doing some fundraising on that as well. And in particular, that's something that's going to fall on the senior pastors, co-pastors, to figure out how to fund. Just like any other time you come up with a capital campaign project or anything like that, that's up to them to do. I think that the district and the conference may have something to contribute, but that'll be a conversation once we understand the scope of it. But in all of that, I don't see a scenario where any additional debt is incurred against this property or any mortgages or anything connected with that. I don't think that'd be good. That'd be bad.
No, not good. Yeah, you guys can all come up here and just sit if you want.
Well, in fact, with the sale of parsonage will actually reduce the debt limit.
That's right. Other questions?
Okay.
Sure.
Is there any plans for the district to start a plant or any kind of church in the new high school on that, right down the road?
And it's already out there.
Any kind of recovery?
Oh, not that.
The only thing we have going on right now, Gary Liederbeck is partnered with Asbury, and right now he's running Celebrate Recovery for them, and that is it's kind of a shift to where he's going to be coming kind of out of Asbury and doing a new plant, but I imagine it'll be significantly different than what we'll be accomplishing through here. So that may have been what you've heard about. It is, this is where name comes in. He was going to call it One Direction, and then a boy band appeared on the scene called One Direction, and so he has opted to rename his church, and he doesn't know what it's going to be named after.
Maybe the district will have both churches then? A mile down the road from each other?
I don't think Gary has a site yet on where he's
So
going to
another
be.
church has already been planted in this area.
No.
So
It's
it's
not
just Celebrate
Celebrate Church.
Recovery?
Okay, let's back up on that one.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I feel a little hostility on that, but I'm not really sure why that's hostility.
I'm trying to go down though.
Two things. One is there's more than enough population base to plant 4 churches out here and for them to be able to coexist and not step on each other's toes. So I'm not, from that standpoint, I'm not concerned. Back to the other part of it is that for me, I wouldn't shoot myself in the foot by doing that if it wasn't wise. Because the bishop holds me accountable. She would say, why did you do that if you can't back it up with the demographics? Gary is currently working is taking Celebrate Recovery, which was a rather large group at Asbury, and he's leading that. Gary's ministry, I don't know if you've ever met Gary. Maybe y'all met Gary. Gary's a very kind of unique personality, and he's going to attract, I think, a very different group than the Catchkeys are, as far as who they connect with and do ministry with. He'll be somewhere in the Madison area. We haven't determined exactly where that is. That's something he'll have to go through board of locations and other things like that. We take into a lot of things into account anytime we allow a church to start in a new place. We look at proximity to other churches, proximity to new works that are being started, and those kind of things, in order to try and minimize any kind of conflict or difficulty with that. So at this point, Gary is in process, but he hasn't landed on where he's going to be, and his location would be a part of the conversation that would include what we're doing here.
But it has been approved by the superintendent. It has been approved by the superintendent of the high school.
So he's made a request for the high school? Okay.
Other questions? Okay.
Related to Rex's concerning the debt, so during this period, I mean, the funds are going to be minimal, I would think. So are we going to be compounding interest like had previously happened to increase our debt, or is interest really going to be paid during this time?
Well, I think a lot of that depends on y'all. You know, I think a lot of that depends on y'all, and when I planted a new church, long before we ever had a facility, I mean, we were meeting in my house. The first Christmas Eve, I was appointed in June, and the first Christmas Eve, I think we had 55 people at my house for candlelight communion. And people were giving at that point toward something that I mean, Christmas of that year, we still had no idea where we were going to do our worship services. We ended up in a baseball stadium. And that was hard for a lot of folks to stomach, and especially when we came in on Sunday morning and the club room, the party room where we had worship had been a party room the night before, and it wasn't the beer smell that bothered us, it was what the bathroom smelled like from folks who got sick on the beer, you know. But they still gave. Not because they liked where we were, but they gave because they liked where we were going, even though we didn't know where we were going. And so, you know, we'll work through all the financial stuff. When I became the district superintendent, I had over $900,000 in debt. That was in June of 2010. We've been faithful stewards, and we currently owe about $189,000. And we're working to eliminate that. The district has several properties for sale that if we're able to sell them, then some monies from that could possibly be used to assist with some of the debt. But, you know, I believe it's just a matter of time before we have more than enough people to service the debt, if we do it right. So I hope that answers your question.
I think there's a sense, and I think this is going to have to be a shift. It's one of the things that we're going to be talking about over the next several months. We're going to have a sense of giving and serving toward the future. That's the only way this will ever work right. We're going to have to say, hey, the possibilities are pretty incredible. Can we get online with that? And Matt's already said it. I mean, he gave you the last 10%. There's going to be some people who say, no, I'm not online with that. And we understand that, right? The hope is that most of you go, gosh, you know, I'm in for the adventure. I really want the adventure. Actually, the adventure is a lot more fun than maintenance. A ton more fun. A ton more fun. And so it's us kind of getting on board with that. Other questions?
Ryan,
Yeah, Rex.
now till April 9th, what's the current policies on the decision-making processes for the church? How's that going to be dealt with?
Until April 9th, we don't have any other major decisions until April 9th. So April 9th, that's when the charge, or April 11th is when the charge conference is going
Right.
to happen.
So continue to do business other than spending money, which I know about.
Yeah, we've got capital freeze on, right?
Right, I understand that, but
Right.
the other things that have to happen, just continue to do that, or?
Yeah, we'll have one meeting between now and then. Would you suggest that we can have a meeting or wait until the charge conference? Yeah.
And that's April 11th.
The charge conference is April 11th.
Yeah, and I wonder about what it would do to change that 9th meeting
To the 11th. Okay.
and then,
I think they're two separate meetings completely, two separate agendas, aren't they?
well, but the leadership that would be elected on the 11th, I think it's the leadership that you want doing the work of the 9th. But
Would you like to see that move to the 11th then?
can y'all do that? Do you think your folks?
We'll have to check our schedule. Think about it.
What date is it?
Thursday,
It's a Thursday.
11th is Thursday.
So the 9th is a Tuesday.
Tuesday to Thursday.
Yeah, we have a lot of folks taking perspectives. And we also wanted it to be a leadership development type.
Okay, all right, then just leave it as is. Leave it as is. That's good.
All right. Other questions?
Are you looking for ideas from the church, or are we just kind of wait until y'all give us ideas and we're just,
Ideas concerning?
the construction, everything that's going on? I mean, are you looking inward for us to say, well, we would like to change that, we would like to change this, or is it just, here's what you got?
Give me the last 10%, it's probably both. There's gonna be some things that.
You're a wise man.
That you're gonna kind of go, huh? And I didn't know about that. But the other part of it is, and I asked some people when I was walking around Sunday morning, because they've been tipped off that I'm probably gonna make some changes around here. And my question was, so what would you change? You know, a lot of y'all have been here a long time, and if this is anything like anything that I've ever built, whether it's a home or anything else, as soon as you get done, you go, I can't believe that I didn't. And we just got through renovating my house, and there's like 2 or 3 things I'm looking at thinking, how did I miss that? And so y'all probably have a list of things that you would put up there going, please change this. I would love to know that. There's no need for me to wander around and not have that. So if you get that stuff to Ron, that would be beautiful. So if there's things that you're aware of that need to be upgraded, need to be changed, that just have not been really conducive towards having people in and out of the building, I'd really love to know that. But then there'll probably be some other things that become very specific to kind of the vision as God and the Catchkeys communicate on kind of what's going to happen here. They'll probably surprise us for you, when the doors open back up. Hopefully there'll be good surprises. Let me say that. Hope you will, but. Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Okay, I have a two-part question, and they're separate entities. Matt, I'm curious to know, in terms of the transition, I don't have a specific detailed question, but my concern is that when you know what you know, even if it's just a concept in your head, that you, and I get a sense that that's your aim anyway, that you be transparent with us and let us know like what the thought process is along the way. Because I feel like in doing that, it would accomplish kind of what you're after and what Andrew's question kind of was leading to. So I mean, I just would like to see that transparency in terms of a process heading forward from this point on.
Yeah, and a lot of that communication will probably come through that transition team and through those meetings.
Yeah, but see, that's not necessarily, in my opinion, my humble opinion, the best approach, because this kind of a forum leads to a different kind of response that you will get than from a smaller. There's some things here that you would hear that you wouldn't hear there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just, in terms of making this work well, I'm not saying you're not, but Ron, you've got an awesome gift. I don't know if it's education or it's just an innate gift for working with people, interacting with people, incorporating and embracing and bringing everyone in. That's what I'm looking for in this process. Not so much just the structural details of it, but the process of incorporating the people that are involved and that are invested, so that when we get to a place where we're crossing that bridge, and more so than we are now, everybody here will feel like they are completely vested in it.
Conceptually, I have no issue with what you're saying, no problem with that at all. Strategically, logistically, it becomes a challenge.
Right.
In that we weren't trying to pull that off. And so I will do my best to try and accommodate that, just as long as you understand that my intention is to do the best I can, knowing that logistically it's a big challenge to try and keep everybody informed and have everybody have feedback loops on that.
Didn't want to walk in front of you. Also, though, there's a leadership philosophy that we have to be careful of that will keep a church small. And that leadership philosophy that keeps a church small is everybody has to be a part of the decision. Okay? And at some point, you have to trust the folks that are given that responsibility for making the decisions. And, you know, like Matt said, along the way there may be some surprises that you just delight in. That, you know, I like sausage, but I don't want to see how sausage is made. I want to enjoy sausage, you know. And a lot of times leadership is making sausage. And, you know, it's not always, you know, a pretty picture. But, you know, if the end product honors God and reaches people in this community, then that's what we're after.
The second part of my question is to Cache Keys, and I'm just curious. I've not been to Crosswinds, although I know you guys fairly well from Emmaus and other things, but I'm curious to know if you have, not Sunday school, but anything like life groups, and I would like to know also what your, and each of you speak to it individually, please, what your spiritual perspective is on the concept that we have, the vision that we have in place as a new baby here with life groups.
Let me just say one thing. I'm going to let them answer that briefly, only because the next 3 leadership meetings we have, obviously we'll begin unpacking that. So I don't want to take too long doing that. All right, so go, give the 2 minutes out.
Go ahead. Yes, we have what are called connection groups. And in fact, that's kind of our word of the year this year is called connection groups. We've had them from the very beginning. They meet in people's homes. They meet now they used to meet all on the same night because we could offer childcare at the church. That way people that had children didn't have an excuse for not coming because we have an adult night out set up for free childcare, you know. Now we've got to the place where we're actually meeting on different nights all throughout the week. We do it in a semester system. So that it tends to follow the school semester system, and then you take about a month and a half break, usually around Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then right at the end of the school, like our groups just now are shutting down. We do about a 10-week semester, and then we take a little break, and then we start up the next semester. And what it does is it gives everybody a chance to get out of one group and into another, and it creates a lot of entry points for new folks coming into the church. And we thought at first, because our previous church, when you got into a group, it was for life, you know, and it's, you know, and sometimes you don't like the people you're in group with, okay, so there was like no easy out to get out, and we thought, well, are people going to actually be in depth, are they going to talk, are they going to get intimate with each other, and the truth of the matter is, now people have scads of friends in the church. They have so many friends in the church that they feel so connected to the church. So the system, the unforeseen consequence of the way we're doing groups now is that people have a lot of easy in and out, and they have so many good relationships and tight relationships across age ranges, across you know, life stages, things like that. They're just it's generating so much fruit that it's been such a good thing for us. Sorry, that's my area of responsibility in the church, so I get excited about that. That's really, it's such a cool system. And do you have anything to say about it? I'm sorry, I took up all the time. I'm yapping.
Your question about using Ron's expertise, I think we're really trying to address that with 3 combined leadership meetings while he's here to do those. So if you're really hungry for that, I would come to those, because there'll be some people from Crosswinds and there'll be you guys as well, and we can all come together. We're all on the same team. You know, we're all on Jesus' team. You know, Jesus on the back. You know, not individual places, and we can come together and do those things. In terms of your second question where you were asking about, vision and those kind of things, I think you said something about the current vision that you have or whatever. We really can't make judgments on how you're living that out and all that. That's something, that you guys have to, figure out how you're living it out. What I would say is that our vision is always, and we believe every Christian's vision should always be for the one that's not here yet. And so, if you ever, like in your house, you live in your house and you kind of get used to everything, and then they have the parade of homes. And you go out of the parade of homes and you check out all these beautiful homes, and then you come into your house and everything looks a little different. Well, it's kind of the same way with churches. We kind of have to get out the door a little bit, and what's it like for that guest coming in? Is there a welcome sign really on the door, or is it kind of everybody here knows what to do, but they don't know what to do? And so we have always said from the beginning of our ministry, we would always be focused more on those who need to be reached than on the comfort of those who are here, because we're going to heaven. But we'd sure like to go to heaven, all of us, knowing that we brought some others along with us. That's what Jesus wants us to do, and that's what we're passionate about.
One of the things the staff is doing this week, I said to you guys, I want you, and Linda, you're already smiling, right? We're going to walk in the doors, and we're going to start to evaluate. If you're a first-time visitor and you have no church memory, or very little church memory, when you walk up to the stoop and you start to walk in the doors, what's the experience? Because we don't think that way. There's a tendency for us to think about, well, this is just home to us. But yeah, but we're trying to get guests here. Right? So we need to think that through. And I think there's a lot of things that we could just walk in and go, wow, we can make a few changes that would really make a difference in the way people perceive what's here. Okay? So that's all part of this. Other questions?
Well, just kind of that, to go toward Tammy's first thing, it's kind of something you already hinted at. You're talking about setting up a new website. Well, couldn't we do that to alleviate some of the unknowns, I guess, is kind of do it like an extreme home makeover, kind of like they do, where you kind of give tidbits on the website of what's going on, and then like have a mystery room that nobody knows about really. But you know what I'm saying? But give some people somewhere that they can.
I love it. I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
Facebook kind of does that for you, doesn't it? I mean, we can set up a Facebook page
You
for.
can set up a closed
Yeah.
group.
Yeah,
But
closed.
yeah, and somewhere where they can throw their comments in there and.
Sure. No,
We-
that's
we-
great.
Great idea.
We believe in over-communicating, okay? We don't want anybody left in the dark. In starting Crosswinds, which we did we started Crosswinds 5 years ago. We launched this Easter 5 years ago. In doing that, we over-communicate. We communicate in so many ways, in so many forms, that you are bound to get it sooner or later, because there's always that person that said, what's happening? I don't know. And you go, well, it's in your bulletin, it's on the website, it's on Facebook, it's on this, it's on that. We will over-communicate to where you're sick of hearing from us.
Good.
Okay? We definitely want you, because if we're all in this together and we're doing this together, we all have to be on the same page. We all have to be going forward together. And that's what you have to over-communicate to make that happen.
Other questions? Yeah, Eric.
I think it was somebody who mentioned earlier, you studied a little bit of the demographics of what is around here.
Yeah.
Is there distinction between here and Harvest area? And because of that distinction, I assume there really is, because I live up there and worship down
Yeah,
there.
there really is.
Actually-
Let Suzanne.
Will there be a carbon copy kind of process and management here, or is there some uniquenesses that
Well,
you
I
think
would consider it a God thing. The demographics are amazingly similar. The people in Madison make more money. The people in Madison are a little more educated. What's interesting is that the people in Harvest have a larger desire to know God, and faith matters are much more important to them than the people are in Madison. So actually the demographics are very, very similar. One thing that we know is, like Harvest, Eric, because you coach, what's it not called coach, you lead Boy Scouts. Like Harvest, the heartbeat of Madison is their children. Their children matter to them. And children and youth, Michael and I are very passionate about children and youth. We know that statistically what research says, the odds of a person accepting Christ over the age of 18 is 4%. I happen to be a 4%. But that, and so are many of you, okay? And praise God for us. But it makes it all the more urgent for churches to be passionate about kids and passionate about youth. We're going to do everything here. We can have such an opportunity here. There's a brand new high school down there waiting on people to love on those teachers. There's a school across here, their school. One of our biggest partnerships at Crosswind, the local elementary school says we are their #1 supporter. And they're going to say that this church is their #1 supporter of the schools. Because when people know you care about their children, then they might want to know the God that we care about as well. And they need help raising their children. So we're very passionate. Eric, the demographics are crazy. It was a crazy God thing. We really thought the demographics would show more of a difference, and it's really not very much of a difference.
I think you brought up one, and that is, I mean, education means probably higher, so that induces a lot of analytical attitude. That induces a lot of people who are very analytical.
Right.
And so you're going to manage them differently, I think.
Right.
So there's got to be some uniquenesses about
Absolutely.
what's going to happen here, I think.
Everywhere you go, you have to know your context and know your. We're all missionaries, right?
And I had second, and I'll be done. This one's more towards Matt. I'd like to ask you to go back to the drawing board on your name, just because Heritage starts with the same letter as Hymnal, and it's very old. And I mean, I kind of struggle with it. That it doesn't really mean
Fresh to you.
It's not fresh. It's not current. It's not Google. It's not Facebook. It's old.
And actually, I articulated the same thing. I've kind of been, and that's why I gave just a little bit of wiggle room in it. Kind of when I said that is because there's that part of me that says it may not effectively convey. And so that's why I'm kind of back and forth. It's such a community name that it has credence, but there is that concern. And so I will continue to stay open to prayer on that.
Just a preference, that wasn't like.
Yeah. And I do one little other thing on the demographics. Sometimes what we perceive as the demographics, just when we drive around, is different than when we start looking statistically. And we ran into that at, when we were doing the Cove and the Chase Valley thing. Because you would think that a church in Hampton Cove and a church out in the Chase Industrial area, that'd be night and day. And what was really interesting was we found out that if you're within so many miles of a Publix, the Publix has already done that demographic work, and they figured out who's kind of alike. And so that was kind of the thing for us, was once we started unpacking that, we're like, well, if Publix figured it out, then probably our stuff's going to prove out to be the same. And actually, they're a little bit more forward-thinking. And so they're saying not only where are we going, all connection to that. Mission Insight is a great tool, and you can take it all the way down to knowing basically what type of toothpaste people in your community purchase. And so it's kind of a little scary on one level, to be honest, but but we use it to understand it. So even though when you drive through the communities, it may feel significantly different, it means that there's a lot of underlying things that are very much the same.
Can I say something just real quick about demographics? Because this is what was so cool about Crosswinds Church. Now, when we say knock on doors, it freaks people out a little bit, because maybe you've had that person knock on, you died tonight, would you go to heaven? That kind of person. No, that's not what we do. We want the people in this area to have a positive encounter with the church. That's what we do. And we knock on the door, we introduce ourselves, we say, hey, brand new church coming, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. We just, if you don't have a church home, you're welcome to come. We invite them to something. And what happens is that if they go to a church already, the first words out of their mouth is, well, I go to Wall Highway Baptist Church, or I go to this church, or they'll tell you exactly where you go, and then you go, well, good. Do you have any friends that you've tried to invite to church and can't get to go to yours? Can you try to get them to come to this? Because sometimes they'll come to something new, and you recruit them to help you. Here's the deal, though. The statistics, when you read the statistics, say that 1 in 5 people, and actually they think it's more like about 14% of people attend a church on Sunday morning. When we're knocking on doors, only 1 in 5 tell you they go to church. It's exactly dead on. Dead on. Extrapolate that into the population in a 2-mile radius here. If there's 16,000 people in a 2-mile radius, I don't care how many churches they plant up and down this road. There's the harvest of ripe here. Ripe. It's great. There are so many people here that don't know Christ, and it is amazing to watch. It's miraculous to watch God move into their lives. We've been witnessing it for 5 years. You've been witnessing it here. As new people, I had a lot of 4%ers raise your hand. The 4%ers just start coming out of the room. It's amazing. It's amazing. I'm sorry. I just got excited.
A couple more questions and we'll land, unless there's something burning. Yeah,
Ron, what's the the long-term plan for the relationship between Crosswinds and if it's Heritage, whatever the new name, is there a,
Same nature.
what the,
Totally up in the air. I'll let Matt address it, but I think he already mentioned it. We don't have a plan on the long term.
well, I guess my thinking was, is Heritage, whatever we call it,
Yep.
Would be 40, 50.
is, you know, the new church launch,
Church 40-50.
you know, gets up and running, becomes strong, and
Right.
would that be the time they would kind of, you know, become their
As far as
own?
reconstituting like the leadership structures and all those kind of things out of the
Yeah, and
transition team.
is there gonna be a, I'm not trying to get rid of Crosswinds, but is that relationship gonna stay, or is it gonna kind of filter off as this one is up and running and?
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked if it got to a point to where there was some sort of realignment of structure at some point. What that would look like, I don't know. With that, you know, currently we're looking at the idea of the 2-point charge and trying to work through that, and adding another pastor to their team to help manage that. You know, if this explodes and you're running 1,000, you know, through 5 worship services here, we'll probably need to revisit that conversation a little bit about how we're structured bids and things. So I just honestly don't have an answer for you. There's not a hard line out there that when it gets to this point, then it breaks back off and it gets its own appointment. That'll be a DS, ultimately it's a DS decision on that. All appointed personnel, their deployment, it comes from the DS and the cabinet, and so they'll just have to take everything into account and make that call. So I wish I could give you a concrete answer, but I just really don't have one.
Beth?
I have 2 questions. We've been here for about 3 years, and I don't have anything against Ron, but why has the district gone with new church development rather than putting us through church revitalization and transformation? Why is that?
Okay.
My second question is to Crosswinds. What do y'all do as far as ministry at Crosswinds? Not just outreach, but ministry to families that's going to bring families in.
Yeah, I take it that's a question on why did you make that decision?
Yeah. New church development has more money. That's
That's what I was going to say. I thought you might
Yeah.
have a better answer.
well, but the other answer is, in effect, we're not going to revitalize Master's Way. We're starting new. Having planted a church before, the great advantage though is we've already got a core team. You know, that's a huge advantage because you can spend months building a core team. And, you know, we've got folks that have demonstrated commitment, and so we're doing a relaunch. It's not a revitalization. We're going to start a new church.
I do understand that, but we had a core team. We had an awesome core team, fabulous. Why don't we take a young pastor with a very young family who's got a lot of fire and a lot of energy and say, come on, let's go get going and go out. Why do we have to start all over? That's what I don't understand.
There's 2 things. Sure. Let's just speak to that. Part of it is a time. The amount of time to go back and to do that startup time is long. And so for that person to come in and to get that momentum and build that out, you would be looking at 18 to 24 months before you really begin to see some momentum. And financially, this church cannot sustain to do that. You will be, the bank will show up and you'll be having to make that decision with the bank. And so part of it is just strategic. What is the most effective, quickest way that we can try and get a relaunch? And so that is partnering with people who already have all kinds of resources and energy and leadership in play to be able to bring everything up to speed more quickly. Now, Suzanne, one of the things she mentioned to me a minute ago that she wants y'all to know is this is a really fast start. Trying to get this ready for this fall is like hitting hyperspeed as far as this goes. So, so that's really what we're looking at, is that because of the debt that's here, we can't take that option. You would be bankrupt. The building would go into foreclosure, and somebody else would come and buy it.
I'll say one more thing, Beth. I think this is the last 10%. Not that Matt didn't leave, but I think this is just the honest conversation. We have ingrown DNA here. I mean, I think you know that. We've had staff conversations about this. The challenge that we have here in revitalization is sending a pastor in to go ahead and say, we're going to do an overhaul in the DNA. That is a very specific skill set, and it's rare. So to go ahead and send somebody in when there's an ingrown DNA, when we know full well we need a very outward focus, that is a very challenging deal. And so that's one of the very reasons why, and I think Tammy asked this question in a previous meeting, why Crosswinds? Well, because this sort of outward focus that they have, we want to see planted in here, right? It's not that we're going to clone everything. It's that there's a certain piece of that we definitely want to grab onto. So I think that's the second piece of this conversation. Go.
This is more of a basic question. You mentioned Mother's Day Out and other programs. We do like the Salvation Army canteen, and there's probably other outreach type of activities that the church is doing. Do we continue those? Do we call it a stop and restart it? How are we going to work that?
The way that we navigated that with the Cove and the Chase Valley thing was that we encouraged Chase Valley to contact anyone they were financially supporting and doing those kind of things with, and just say, look, we're going through this transition. There's a lot of change coming on. We don't know what the future holds, and so we don't want you to be caught off guard. And so our attention really went to those people who were expecting something from the church, to communicate to them as quickly as possible. That may or may not be the future. That's something that the senior leadership team's got to work out once we have a better understanding of what the future looks like. Right now, the wisest thing to do is to communicate to all those people and just say, we're going through transition. We don't know what the future is going to look like, and if we're going to be able to continue support or not. So we want to give you as much lead time as possible to begin to develop resources or whatever that is from other people with that. I don't think there's been any conversation about those particular issues. Those are the kind of things that as Ron's in here and as they come up to the staff, those will have to be navigated. And a lot of them be those things that just all of a sudden pop up and you're like, oh, we didn't think about this one, we need to do that. So he'll use his amazing skills
Thanks, Dan.
To work that.
Thanks a lot.
Can I answer Beth's question about children? I think that's an important question. What do we do for children? We do a lot of things for children. First of all, we feed our church. The community is well aware of this. We feed 104 children a week at the local elementary school that we send food for. On our campus, we have 3 soccer fields that we put in and dedicated to the local AYSO, so everybody knows that we're about that. We host the largest Easter egg hunt in our community. We have between 500 and 700 people come every year, and that's kind of our thing, and we have reached so many people for Christ through hunting some Easter eggs as well. In terms of what happens internally, we have a food bank that's open every week where we have served 1,000 families so far this year. And so obviously that's helping feed hungry children in our community. We're passionate about that. We also, as part of our children's programming, we have a high energy, small group type environment for our children as well, where they can come in. We have 2 services, so they come to those, which are all manned by volunteers. We don't believe in burning our volunteers out. Our entire church is built on a first Sunday team, second Sunday team, third Sunday team, 4 Sunday teams. People come in and rotate. We do not believe in burning out. Burnout saints do not represent Jesus well. And so we have that going on as well. In the summer, we run some programs to help parents. We don't do a traditional vacation Bible school. The vacation Bible school is more for people inside your church, as opposed to it's not really an outreach. And so we do something called Camp Crazy, and Camp Crazy is wildly popular. Actually have waiting lists for people to get into Camp Crazy, which is a camp where people in the church can volunteer. Let's say you're really, really good at kite flying, and you can come in for an hour and you show the kids how to do kite flying. Then in the afternoon they have somebody who shows them how to do puppets. We bring animals in. So it's just crazy activities, and all the community children come to that. It's like a big deal. And so we are all about reaching children. Our youth ministry is, we know that what we have discovered is, Michael and I used to be youth pastors. Youth ministry kind of limps along when it's on Sundays. When you move youth ministry to Wednesday night, something happens. The kids like getting out of the house in the middle of the week, and their parents are more than glad to have a break from them. And so they come out on Wednesday nights. We have a vibrant youth ministry with lots of volunteers that run that. And we have over 65 people probably who serve in our children's ministry at our church. And we probably have upward 15 to 20 that serve in our youth ministry, that service our youth. And we want to make sure that no child walks in on Sunday and somebody doesn't know who they are and welcomes them.
You'll know that we have the ministries that represent parents here, a lot of moms. Moms Stay Out, MOPS, Mothers Preschoolers, and Moms Next. Do you have ministries that represent dads and moms?
The MOPS director for Madison County actually goes to our church, and all that we offer our people to go to Capshaw, which is close to us, that kind of stuff. That's what we do. We don't actually have it there was no need for us to have it in our facility because of where we were located.
I have a quick question that relates to the children. I hope this isn't too far down the weeds, but and I know y'all do too, we try very hard, and I think we succeed in Safe Sanctuary.
Oh, yeah.
And so we have made it a standard not to let anybody teach our children who hasn't been worshiping with us for a year. So
Safe Sanctuary's policy is 6 months.
6 months, okay.
That's Safe Sanctuary.
So will we have people, when I say we, I'm talking about,
Yes.
the congregation who will meet here. Will there be committed people from your church who you know and have been worshiping with you guys that will come in and be with us?
We will not have people serving our children who we don't know that they are saved. That will not happen.
We do a criminal background.
We do. We actually do more. Most churches just do the freebie check out of Montgomery. We pay an extra $9 for every ball. We run a national check on everybody. And we are, as of, because I just asked the other day, how compliant are we? We're about 99% compliant on that with everybody's. Some are waiting checks, but that's how up to date we keep that. We're vigilant about. I used to be a school teacher. I'm very, very vigilant about children.
And I knew at your church there would be, but will there be those people that will commit to come here and teach here?
There will be people who, if they choose to do so, absolutely, that will be their choice. But I would hope that perhaps some of you would be here and you would help during that transition time as well.
Well, and there will be, but I can tell you right now, we're hurting for volunteers.
Okay. Well, and a lot of that, and you know what? And that's something that we'll have to work on. And we'll get there.
Right, let's do this for
Because
questions.
we all need to serve the children, and we've never arrived and we've never done our time.
Yeah. All right, so let's try to keep the questions at 50,000. I mean, I get the importance. No, I get the importance of all this. I'm not minimizing it all. But these are the things that will unfold over the next months, right? I mean, and I know we want all the questions answered all of the night, and we can't obviously do that. Are there any other sort of big questions? I mean, we could stay here until midnight if everybody wants to do that, but I don't know that that's going to be helpful. Sure, go ahead.
First of all, I said we appreciate that y'all answered our call to come and help us. Second, my question is that are you sending us an experienced pastor or one that's right out of seminary? What experience level are you giving us in April?
Well, they're right here.
But you're adding
The third.
Yes.
Yes.
Who's not appointed here? That's important to get clear.
That pastor will be appointed to the circuit as the associate pastor to Michael and Suzanne.
We'll have 3 pastors.
Yes, you'll have 3 pastors. But these 2 are more than proven. I am not at liberty to say who the third is. People have said to me, Dale, are you going to be our DS next year? And I say, well, I don't know, because none of the appointments are made until all of the appointments are made. And so April 14th, we'll have complete information as to who is going to be appointed here. If things work out, as it appears they're going to work out, this is someone who has gone through new church planter training, and that was one of the things that the cabinet was adamant about, was that if we were going to do a relaunch, we needed people under consideration to join this team, who had been vetted through our rigorous process now rigorous process. Y'all need to know Matt has only been on the job less than a year. And so he's brought so much in the short time he's been here. And the person that I think will be here has a wonderful ministry to young folks that I'm just in awe of what he's been able to do. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, and this person was somebody, it's kind of a big thing, because this was somebody I was really talking about planting with. You know, this person he's just named. And so, kind of when all this came up, you know, I don't have a long list of potential planters to send out. I was like, hey, I think we're going to do this thing. And so this is somebody that it had already been, in our process at this point is not pleasant that you have to go through to be assessed as a planter, just because we had so many failures. Yeah, and so we found out there's a lot of people who feel called to plant, but they're not gifted or equipped. And so we knew they had both. And so this was somebody that went through and we were looking at, and I was very excited, you know, this is going to be a good planter, and I think that this is a good dynamic for him.
It was a crapshoot when they chose me and Suzanne. It really was.
Kind of lucky.
Any other big, any other big picture questions?
I want to do 150,000 for this year.
Yeah, please, yeah.
This is their anniversary. And they're spending it with you.
Anything else? Like I said, I wasn't trying to shut down important questions. I think everything's important, but I think if we're not careful, we will be here to the end. Any other big picture things? While Dale's here, I mean, the reason I wanted Dale and Matt and Suzanne and Michael here is I thought that way everybody knows what everyone's saying. And I just thought we'll land that, and now from here we can get busy. We got the big mechanical things. We at least have a general idea about. Okay. Anything else?
I have something extremely important to me. Did you guys move it off the perspective night, or did you leave it on the perspective?
We moved it, oh, no, he's still got it on the perspective night. For the charge conference, he's got it on perspective.
We'll take
His
notes.
perspectives?
Can you miss? Is that what you said, or will you?
Can't we?
Yeah, maybe it'll be one of the speakers then.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
If it's a Thursday, it's every Thursday, so it's this weekend.
Yeah, I chose the 11th because if it's announced Sunday, 10 days would be Wednesday, but I can't be here Wednesday. And so, you know, you have to have a 10-day notice for a charge conference to be legal, so.
Any other 50,000 footers? Okay, well, I want to thank Dale and Matt and Suzanne and Michael for coming, because I think it helps fill in some of the gaps, and you're hearing it right from the folks that are in the seats trying to make the right decisions, and that gives us the breathing room now to kind of run, okay? Well, let's go ahead and pray, and we'll go ahead and get out of here. Suze, you want to pray?
Sure. God, we love you. God, so many times in life we ask the why questions, and what's going on, and we have so many thoughts swirling and uncertainty, but you are God in whom we can place our trust and our faith. And God, I ask that you would just be with all of us and help us to keep our eyes focused on you, to help us trust in you, for us to rest confident and know that you are the one who leads all of us. Lord, just give us a heart and a passion to reach those who don't know you. So we think about all the events in your life that occurred this Easter week. Oh, Lord, help us just to know that we might, like you, had to go through some pain to get there. But God, the resurrection is coming, and it is powerful. And you live in each of us. God, help us to live in others. Just be with us. Give us your courage. Give us your peace. Give us your strength. Give us your wisdom. Put our faith and trust in you, Jesus. It's in your precious name we pray.
Thanks, you guys. Have a great night. See you Sunday.